I call it a classroom. It's a thing we are determined to learn. And this is one of the iterations.
Suction.
Yeah.
Right.
So normally, yeah. Do you see the flame being pulled inwards?
Yeah.
So it opens into a larger chamber here, and it creates a difference in pressure. So matter and what have you would want to go from low, high to low, and it'll get sucked into this chamber here. You can see a sideways flame through that hole if you take a look. We're creating a really crude vacuum, this pot here, which will eventually be leveled and sealed quite tightly. We continue the tube. The suction goes out this way. Very close to the fire, there's little carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and smoke.
It's a really clean fire because it's burning it at a higher temperature than usual, so it's burning out most of the solid matter. So you're hopefully getting mostly just carbon dioxide and water.
Yeah.
Yeah, or very close to pure.
And
Smells
to the
really
touch,
nice.
Yeah,
You
like you couldn't stand in the smoke like that if it was regular fire.
you
Yeah.
can feel this here. That's warm.
It's
Just
so nice.
Bear in mind that what a fire does is it heats the air, and the air just blows away. So really, you're heating the air for as long as that air is in contact with you, which is a few seconds or a few minutes, really.
Right.
So our challenge, what's really going to get this greenhouse up to a proper temperature, is when we figure out how to trap or get a heat sink, a thermal mass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we're understanding is that you've got to balance all the elements. Like the air's got to feed the fire's got to create the heat, but then that heat has to be captured. So we're going to capture the heat in water, and we're going to heat water and let that water sort of hug the soil and keep the soil warm.
Right.
Yeah. So it's all about transferring and holding and convection and all that stuff. So, like, as I've been learning in my head, like, what I'm thinking is it kind of feels like it's a little planet, you know? So
Mhm.
first you put up your little, your atmosphere and your ozone, and then after that you work on your oceans, and then you get the sun to heat stuff. Like, I'm starting to understand how the whole package works.
All around the planet had a similar fire underground, and very similar physics and dynamics. So our ancestors from India would have done this exact same thing. Their word for it is called chulha in that language, and it's wood saving, and it gets the smoke out of your house, and
Healthy and safe. Like modern day, a lot of people are trying to do off-grid and low-impact stuff, and they're experimenting with stuff. And there's like technology that's revived itself called rocket stoves. That's what they're being called because of there's a rocket sound that comes from the flame.
yeah, it's because it opens in the gym.
And that's exactly what we've got here. It's an old fire pit, you know, a chulha, Dakota fire pit, or just a regular pit fire, you know. But the physics and the science is the same. It's just somewhere along the line we lost that knowledge. And now we've got to go look at really complicated designs that involve welding and math and suction flow calculations. And, you really don't need that. You just got to go back to working with the soil, working with the fire. You'll know how big to make the hole. You'll just know. I believe that about an hour of this fire should heat, we've got 3 barrels. It should heat these barrels up to maybe 60 degrees or so.
Okay.
And that should be able to keep the air and the soil inside here warm for about 2 days.
A little bit.
The copper tubing, right?
Yeah.
And water would flow through it from a reservoir of a barrel. And our first idea was to allow the fire to heat it. We could also allow the air in the exhaust to heat it. But water will be heated inside the coil, and it will go to soil that are around plants, and its heat would be liberated to the soil, and hopefully keep everybody nice and warm above 5 or 10 degrees or so, and then come back in after it's given its heat to the soil to be reheated again.
So water will run through the coils.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the
go
water
into
will be
the
heated.
barrels?
Yeah. As
Water will be coming from the barrel.
Oh, from the barrel.
Running.
Okay.
it'll be a closed
It'll
loop.
be a closed
Right.
loop.
So
Okay.
the hot water, as the water heats, it rises.
Yeah.
And that'll go into the barrels and connect the 3 barrels. And then the coldest water at the bottom of the last barrel will run back into here. So as the hot water goes up, it creates a suction and sucks the cold water in, heats it up, sends it out, and then it just keeps that
Yeah.
loop going.
Wow.
And
But-
it basically serves as a siphon, you know, like when you use an air to suck water. But it's a thermosiphon, so it's the heat moves water and the vacuum created sucks more water. So without the need of electricity and with no pump, water's gonna flow through it and constantly be heated.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
between here and here are plants, okay?
Oh,
Not just the reservoir.
well, the barrels are gonna be like around will be filled with soil because
Right.
the mass is gonna be warm enough to radiate and keep soil warm.
And the warm soil is what helps the plants
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah.
It's like the greenhouse.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
plants
yeah.
are more sensitive to the temperature of the soil than the temperature of the air.
And what sort of inspired you to take on this project?
The desire to grow our own food.
Okay.
That's where it started from. For like a lot of different reasons, costs, quality, and just the consumer freedom to grow your own food.
Mhm.
That's always been like it's been maybe 5 years that it's been our primary focus. So every year we try to perfect the art of gardening and how to cram stuff into like a short season and a small summer, and we got 3 months of growing season here, and we try to perfect that, and then we realize, well, you know what, you're not going to perfect it until you can grow food all through the year.
Mhm.
Yeah, 12 months a year. And having a greenhouse that, you could just wire it and put 2 or 3 heaters in here and it would be hot, right?
Mhm.
But to be dependent on fossil fuels and electricity to do that is not really independence. So you have to figure out how, on your own, with your own ability, you can grow stuff for yourself.
Mhm.
So we figure, okay, no time like the present. There's a winter coming up. We're not exactly ready to grow huge crops and fields,
Yeah.
but we have 3 or 4 months of practicing on how to keep the cold out there and keep the warm in here. So
Mhm.
let's go for it and let's do it. So we did it.
And how did you build it?
It's basically birch saplings. It's built in the same style as a longhouse. In terms of, well, again, we wanted to be independent. We didn't want a bunch of materials that were expensive or hard to find. And we wanted stuff from the area. We wanted to show that this area can feed itself, kind of thing, like a little closed loop.
Yeah.
So, and also looking at the structure, there's wisdom in what took 10,000 years to figure out, So this is actually the strongest structure and the cheapest structure. It's good for snow, it's good for exposure to sunlight, it's good for just basic strength and not flying away and stuff. It's as strong as if we had to build it with like much more expensive hardware material.
Yeah.
So we got some birch seedlings tied together with cloth ties, anchored in the ground, about maybe half a foot down, and tied with some ribs to stabilize it. And we've got a poly tarp, 2 layers on it, and we've got a fan blowing air between it. The thick layer of air just adds to the insulation value of the wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's just one big ball. It's probably like a foot of air in there, I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
It's super thick, but it helps because just plastic alone is only that thick. And we basically did every little thing we could to make sure that air doesn't leave or go. So on the north wall, we put a couple feet of straw to make it even that much more insulated.
Yeah.
Insulated the floor. And just, we got a few cracks to seal to make sure that the air doesn't get out. But basically the skin has been formed, or the atmosphere that's going to hold all of this in.